Hello, how you doing? This is Mr. M, and you're watching another installment of Your Vote Matters. And I'm bringing my co-host to the stage, Jessica Williams. How you doing today?
I'm so good, Mr. M. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We're having some technical difficulties already, so I'll just let people know that's watching. For any reason, if either one of the hosts we get kicked off of the screen, it is what you call it, Jessica?
It's Mercury retrograde.
Mercury retrograde, Mercury's in Gatorade. I don't know what they say. That's
Yes,
one
and
of
it
those things.
actually goes direct on election day. So,
Look at that. Wow. So as you know, if you've been watching, Your Vote Matters is a podcast dedicated to civil engagement and things of this nature. And we have a wonderful panel today, and we were going to be talking about police reform. Jessica, you want to introduce any part of that or?
yes, absolutely. So, as Mr. M said, today's podcast is dedicated to police reform, social justice reform. As a matter of fact, my shirt says no justice, no peace, because that is how we feel as a people, as a country. So, our panel discussion, we are going to be having Miss Bettye Peterson Sykes, a stunning boomer and healthcare administrator. We're going to be having Mr. Lance Blaylock, a community advocate and father of two. We'll be having Sergeant Fred Miller, 32 years in law enforcement, and Mr. Bill Duke, legendary filmmaker, humanitarian, and cultural icon. So, with that being said, let's get started. The presidential election is 48 hours away. We advocate for the fierce and urgent sense of now to please go out and vote. So, with that being said, 80 million Americans have already cast their ballots, and every vote matters. That's right, Lance. I love your hat. Can you tell us where
Sure.
you got it?
Your moms, Jacqueline Blaylock. You know,
Yes.
we have a voice. People have fought very
Yes.
hard.
If you want a
People have
hat like
bled.
that, if you want a hat like that, feel free to go to yourvotematters.store. And we have a few people already in the comments. We have a Miss Ravioli saying hello. How you doing, Miss Ravioli? And Nigel, a politician out of Queens, says hello. How you doing, Nigel? And Shay Hercules says showing love from the 183rd Bees channel. So today we're going to try to engage with the audience just a little bit. And we also have Mr. Jones saying good day, y'all. Okay, so where do we start, Jessica? Where should we start? Since we have an actual clear stream on you this time, I want you to
Yes.
start us off.
Well, so the first thing I want to ask, and I would actually like to direct this question to Sergeant Miller. If you could share your thoughts on the protests that have been going on, do you think that they've been productive? Do you think that the looting has diluted the movement and the message of the people? You being in law enforcement for over 30 years, I think that you have a really unique lens. You see the side of the people, but you also see the side of the law enforcement. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the protest has made a difference, different than other protests or situations that I've experienced, because of the cultural diversity mainly that you have involved in the protests. The looting, with regards to that comes hand in hand with that level of protest. You're always going to have people to look for an opportunity to to um, to express themselves in a different way throughout different levels of crisis.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
What
Mr.
do you what do
Blaylock,
you guys think?
Mr.
Oh,
Yes.
I was just
Blaylock,
gonna say that. I was just gonna say that. It
My
change
sound
and
is
get it.
coming through
It really
low.
would be. But it doesn't work that way in this country. Unfortunately, like from women's suffrage, slavery, from history, the only way that we've been able to enact any kind of real change is to take to the streets, is to shut down the buses, shut down the system, cost them money economically. Then they listen. In Oakland, they shut down when they have issues up in north, they shut down the ports. You shut down the ports, you're affecting the bottom line, money. they're not willing to give you an ear and listen. It's sad it has to come down to that, but that's just how it is. Unless you're going to affect them financially, they probably don't want to hear it. But we're able to actually get a dialogue going with this last round of protests, and that's a start. People are talking, people are engaged, which is a good.
Okay, Miss Bettye, can you hear us? I think Miss Betty's having some technical difficulties with the audio. Miss Bettye, can you hear us?
I'm really happy. Yeah, I am. I'm in.
Okay, so there you go. You look clear now. All right, so Miss Bettye, we'll come right back to you.
Okay.
I think she's having some technical difficulties, but we can hear you, just to say. So I want to reiterate the question, and I
don't know.
I want to reiterate the question. I also want to thank everybody for joining this panel. And with that being said, Mr. Bill Duke, we are asking, do you feel that the protests have been diluted from the looters by the looters? Excuse me, I'm being tongue tied by that. And do you feel the protests it has been productive? And that question, that's for you, Mr. Bill Duke. Can you hear us? I'm not sure.
Mr. Duke? Mr. Duke, are you there?
You know what?
He's talking. There he went.
He's talking, but we didn't hear him. So,
but to that point about you asking in regards to the with the looting, it seems like the media always tries to put a negative spin on people out there, fighting for social justice. And look at the negative. Yeah, there's going to be some negative involved, and unfortunately, to bring about change, things like that happen. And there's been some stores that got the windows broken and stuff. A lot of these stores have insurance. You can replace property, right? You can't replace a human life. Property is replaceable. It's property. It's material. It's nothing but human beings getting murdered in the street. That you can't replace that. So yeah, I feel sorry for some of these corporations, but they have insurance.
All right, so hold that thought right there. And Mr. Fred, I know you have something to say about that too as well, but just give us a second, and let's see if Bill Duke, your audio working right this time? Yep, I can see you talking, but we can't hear you, and your mic is not muted. I don't know what's going on with the actual stream today. You can try again. No, maybe your volume is all the way down. All right, so we'll let you hop out and hop back in. But with that being said, Fred, I know you had something you wanted to say in response to Mr. Blaylock. I'm gonna go ahead and let you say that. Fred, do you hear me?
Well, yeah. Well, I just don't think that I think if you ask the people who are looting and things like that, it has nothing to do with the protests. It's, crime is crime. And to say that people have insurance, a lot of people don't. Even though they have businesses, they don't. And it's so when you're out there protesting, you're exercising your constitutional rights. When you're out there committing crimes and has nothing to do, so if it takes away from the protest, yes. If you got people out there protesting, once again, they're exercising their constitutional rights. Crime is crime, and it can't be blended to the same thing. Now, what I said earlier, can you expect it? Yes, you could expect it every time because people take it.
Yeah, no one's endorsing, destroying property that someone else has worked hard for. No one's endorsing, committing crimes or doing bodily damage to people. But people are frustrated, and when people are frustrated, they act irrational, And there's bad seeds in in every group. You know, you get 1,000 people, they might all agree on this, but you know, there's going to be a few that are going to be a little, you know, out there. So it's just like Fred says, just a par for the territory, you know. But I think the most important thing is that we were able to at least get some politicians to sit down and listen and realize that there's a lot of pain and suffering and anguish and a lot of a sense of hopelessness, like in '92 when we had the Rodney King riots. You know, I was here. We were all a part of that. You know, and what it was is we seen Rodney King, an unarmed black man, beat over and over again by, you know, multiple police officers. We seen it with our own eyes. You know, unarmed black man. And then after the trial, for a jury, I believe it was in Semi Valley, to say that was okay. That was within your rights. That made us feel hopeless. And when you get people who feel hopeless, then they become dangerous. You know, sense of hopelessness and despair is that's, you know, that's why they gangbang. That's why they do, you know, the things they do in the streets, because they're hopeless. They feel like there is nothing for them. So that's when they lash out, do things, you know, like they do, you know.
That makes me think about what Tupac said: when you're asking for help, your help, you know, your asking becomes pleading, your pleading becomes desperate when nobody's listening, when it seems like the powers that be aren't listening or doing anything to quell the people in a way that, you know, benefits everybody. But one thing that I think is not talked about enough are the sort of bad actors who were deliberately, you know, looting, going around making it look like it was coming from the protesters. And I'm not saying that there weren't protesters who were getting, you know, a little wild, but we saw on social media so much that they did not show on the news. We saw groups like Antifa who were showing up with the bricks and, you know, that were not actually a part of the protests, that were destroying neighborhoods. And I think that's not talked about enough. So, you know, I hate the thought of actions like that and people who, you know, would wish to detract from the movement taking part in diluting the movement, because at the end of the day, this isn't about just, you know, protesting for the sake of protesting. It's, we are sick and tired of seeing our people, seeing black people, black and brown people dying at the hands of police with no accountability. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we see some officers who make the rest of the force look bad because they're out there in the streets acting like judge and jury and executioner. And people are tired of that. That's why you're seeing protests around the world, not just the city, but the world. And so I
That's
think
what
that, you know, go ahead.
that's what was inspiring to me, to see people in England, France, you know,
Yeah.
the black
I saw people
diasporas
in
all over the world.
Syria.
Yeah, I mean the black
People in
diasporas all over the
Syria were
world,
protesting.
and I mean, you know, American chattel slavery was a bit different than you know, a lot of other slavery and other types of things around the world. So we have a particular mind state and a particular set of circumstances we've been dealing with for 400 years. So I get that, but the fact to see that people, you know, black, white, brown, everybody actively speaking out against injustice throughout the world was actually inspiring. Yeah, you know, you say
And
it was George
yeah,
Floyd, but there's been many other people but besides that, and it just gets to a tipping point where we get tired of seeing it.
so many
Eventually,
people.
right. So that was pretty good to see.
And
You
we don't
know,
want to,
everybody.
and we don't want to bash the police, because that's not what this is about. We do need the police. We just want a solution. How can
So we
Well,
she kind of muted really quick, but Fred, were you attempting to say something?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I got the one.
There's a lot of factors to be brought into consideration, and so education is a big part of everything. When Lance mentioned the riots in '92, that there wasn't a lot of transparency with law enforcement and the public. So people there's more than just an election with the president that comes every 4 years. You have a situation where there's local governing. And so when you talk about local, which is here, the way laws are set, it's kind of difficult to prosecute a police officer without showing a malice intent. So that means, well, not even a malice intent. Let's say this officer would have to pretty much say to someone, you know what, today I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna kill me somebody. Well, this is kind of premeditated, but just in the course and scope of the duty, there's minimal accountability. So that's going to change. And some policies and things like that have already changed. And things are situational that, I usually break down uses of force with police officers. And based on the policies and the law, the way it is now, uh, that's just the way it is. So so with transparency, for example, when you learn the policies, then you know what to try to change. And this is why you have a police commission to look at certain things within the city of Los Angeles. You have a police commission who looks at these things, and then they basically are the bosses, and they enact change with agencies. You had a
What?
situation recently where the officers got into a shooting at a not in California, I believe. They got into a shooting, which was a deadly incident, right? But the only thing that city armed the officers with was pretty much a baton and a handgun. So when officers are only supported with just a gun and a baton, and they go in against a guy with a knife, what is the best option to use? So that's poor training for one, and then that's a lack of equipped officers in order to deal with various situations.
Well, that's awesome. Uh, I believe it's one of the Scandinavian countries, Norway or Finland. They have
Want
over
them to engage
500.
more. I want to. Oh,
They have over 500 hours of de-escalation training. How to bring the situation down. Not be afraid and shoot lethally over non-lethal issues, but to de-escalate. We need more de-escalation training. Also, he talked about transparency. Every cop should have, because if he's ordained by the state to legally shoot you and kill you if he has to, get away with it scot-free, they should always have a camera on them. And they can never cut that camera off when they pull someone over. Sometimes they cut them off. Every officer should have a camera. Every officer should have that transparency. We should see what's going on. So let the public be able to make the choice. Like, was that okay? Was that not okay? Because they have a hard job.
Yeah, policies already exist that not when you make contact, but when you there's a potential contact that the cameras go on, not at the last minute. That's called a late activation. The activation should be much more timely. So that policy is already in place.
Is that every police force in America or just here?
I can't answer for every police.
Yeah, see, I'm saying it should be universal. Every
okay,
city.
Let's I'm sorry to cut you with him short. I just want to see if Bill's microphone is working at this point. We can't hear you. You can hear us though? That's weird. I really don't know what's going on with your microphone. I apologize about that. Is there a laptop that you have access to? Yeah, we can't hear you at all. So I apologize about that. Maybe you. I'm gonna take you off of the stream and then hop back in, and maybe hopefully it'll work right this time. If not, I would suggest signing up with logging over for a laptop or computer. But the volume is totally messed up right now. I really want to hear what Mr. Bill Duke has to say. He comes with a lot of wisdom. But we're having some technical difficulties, as we said in the beginning of the stream. I do want to acknowledge some of the people in the audience that said that they're glad that we're having this conversation. And that's Brooklyn Honcho says, I'm so happy we're having this conversation. And so did Shay Hercules. He says this dialogue is great. Let me pose this question to the panel really quick. Fred, you have how many years on the LAPD force?
A little bit over 32.
Okay, wow. And Mr. Blaylock, is kind of clear where you stand. You have in your title
I've been
demilitarize.
pulled over for 32. Yeah. I'm not saying defund. I'm saying demilitarize them. I mean, some of these police forces are taking so many resources for. You should see the type of stuff that they got to use on American people. It is
Right.
crazy. Woo! I mean, some of
With
those
that being,
resources.
and Miss Bettye, being a healthcare advocate, I'm sure she's seen a lot as well. So I want to pose this question to the panel. During the last debate, they spoke of they asked both candidates about, and I'm paraphrasing just a little bit, but they spoke about the talk that Black and brown people will have to have with their children, due to being targets. So it seems that is no longer a secret, or like you said, when the Rodney King thing happened, it was kind of like the first time we all seen it on a national scale on the being recorded with a camera. But do we all agree that there is a problem with police brutality in this country? That's the question I want to ask. And I think I know your answer, Mr. Blaylock, but I'll start with you.
Oh, it's been that way since the conception of the overseers, the officers, overseers, and the slave catchers with the little sheriff badge. It's been that way for 400 years,
Copy.
Even though we're in modern days, in modern society, things haven't changed much. We're still getting incarcerated at large amounts, disproportionately. We're still suffering from many, many things that are inherently inflicted upon us, and so so it's something we've been dealing with for a while, and unless there's a systematic overhaul, I can't say anything. I've been pulled over maybe in my life, I would say 20 times, maybe. All but 2 times I've been asked to step out the car, handcuffed, placed on the curb, searched. You fit the description. Big guy, where you do time at? Where I do time at? I went to place where the guns and drugs. Sat on the curb, had my car searched. Only very, on one hand, I can count the times I've been given a ticket and not been searched and handcuffed and sat on the curb.
Okay.
I've come to expect it. And I've had that talk with my son and my mom. I mean, I'm light skinned, but I've had that conversation with mom. She told me, yes, sir, no, sir, be very respectful. And you have to be that way when they come into your window with their hand on their gun, accelerated heart rate, looking for something. So, there's that talk is something very real. It's something that we have in our community, and it's essential, because at the end of the day, it's about coming home. You might have to bite your pride, swallow your pride, take some verbal abuse and whatnot, but you're trying to get home to your family. So if it means, yes, sir, you're right, sir, then that's how it is, because we're trying to survive.
Okay. Miss Bettye, do you have, I'll say Fred for last on this one. Miss Bettye, do you feel that police brutality is a problem in this country, or do you feel it's being polarized right now due to social media?
I feel very much like it's a problem with police brutality. Now, as far as having the talk, with your son or grandsons or whoever, that goes well. But when it comes to actually happening, being stopped, police don't consider that as being respectful to them just because you have your hands, on 10 and 2 or at 12 on the wheel. They don't even consider that. It's only
or driving alone
on you if you're in your car. They're ready to do what they're going to do. If they ask you a question, you try and answer, and it seems like they don't even want to hear what you have to say. So it is a problem, and like we said before, it starts with training. I think police need more training, and if they get more training, then they know how to deal with people. I mean, you have to give respect in order to get respect. That's my motto, with anybody. So that being said, there is a problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. And Mr. Fred, Sergeant Fred, in your experience as a LAPD sergeant and officer before you were a sergeant, did you or do you feel that there is a problem with police brutality in this country?
In the country, okay. Yes, um, and so that lends it. I think your name is Bettye. What she said about training. There's a lot of incidents that is training. There was an incident, and I get this. I don't follow a lot of stuff, but people make sure I stay in the game, and send me videos and things like that. So there was a business owner somewhere who was in his shop at 1 o'clock in the morning, and an officer goes, I guess he's by himself with his partner, and he inquires about why these people, three people, black, are in his shop. Uh, and it goes on and on and on. And the guy willingly came to the door. Now, that's not a firing offense. It's not an abuse. It's a lot of training, because even when the sergeant got there, he didn't know. What I said was that comment. It's sad that a citizen knows more about constitutional law than officers are sworn to protect. And so abuse, I haven't seen a lot of abuse. Now, I didn't know. Just say it. I didn't say I didn't see any. I haven't seen a lot of abuse, but I have seen a lot of disregard for training. I have seen what I feel to be racially motivated situations, fear, and an overreaction to situations. Um, so I've seen those things, and so how do you fix that? So some of those things you you could say all the training that you want. I mean, officers get a lot of training. Now,
Not enough.
do they get a lot of physical training now? Situational training? No, everything is online. Most of the things are online.
Let
So
me
is
ask you,
that, in
Fred.
my opinion, very helpful? Absolutely not.
Let me ask you, Fred. How many hours of de-escalation training do you guys get as far as bringing the situation down? You know, there's fear on both sides. Sometimes you might get a person who's mentally not capable. And special needs people. They often get abused by cops because cops don't understand what's going on. They're not following orders correctly. And they don't. Right now, they're trying to have I believe it's Northern California. They're situations where there's people who have mental issues. They're not sending out the police first. They're sending out kind of like psychologists kind of with the officers to deal with the situation first, because the officer, he's not a medical professional. He doesn't understand mental situation. He sees someone's not listening, then he gets worked up. So like I'm saying,
Police
I think it's
officers,
Finland.
yeah, police officers nationwide never signed up for how
Right,
to deal with people with mental disabilities.
right,
And
right.
that was something, like a lot of things were thrown as, like let's say business disputes and things like that. Police officers shouldn't be the first responders to those type of situations. They're not trained for it. And
Right.
no matter how much training you feel that you're going to give them, there's a lot more training that goes into it that you can dedicate officers to in order to be successful. So
Mm-hmm.
if that is the first response, and then there's an action that's dictated by the individual who may be mentally prepared, or even worse, mentally impaired and on under the influence of drugs.
Oh
That's
yeah.
a very difficult situation for police officers to be confronted with. But if you have that latter situation, even a mental health professional is going to call police officers because they're
Yeah,
not
if it
able to
gets to
deal
that,
with that
yeah.
psychosis of the drug that may be
If it
in.
gets to that, level, yeah, a lot of these guys are,
Correct.
professionals who know how to do that. Let me ask you real quick. True that all officers are taught to take lethal shots when they pull out their weapon to shoot to kill? Are they ever
No,
taught, hey, this
no,
guy's
no,
just a
no,
kid, you can just shoot him in the leg, he's unarmed, just shoot him in the butt or something
no,
like
no.
that?
So first of all, you don't want to. So no, they're not trained. It's called trained to stop. Now, I'm not talking about every agency. I'm telling you about my training and my experience. It's shoot to stop. It's never shoot to kill. Now, I've attended a lot of town hall meetings, and I've heard that, well, you should shoot them in the leg, shoot them in the arm, and I still have people who believe that wow, you should be trained to shoot. When you when you do something like that, it takes a whole lot of accuracy. It's not like the movies. It takes a whole lot of accuracy to be able to do that in a stressful situation that you may have to be able to to use deadly force or that level of force.
So more training.
So you're
more
asking
training.
everybody to be experts in shooting, or even
well, if you have the right to shoot someone and get away with it, you should be an expert. You should be able to tell the difference between a handgun and a cell phone. If you can't, you shouldn't have that gun. If you literally cannot tell the difference,
that's not true.
So hold on, guys. I just want to see if Mr. Bill Duke's audio is working now. Mr. Bill Duke, can we hear you? Nope, we still can't hear you, man. This is disheartening. We see you good. This is disheartening, though, man. I'll take the blame. I don't know what's going on today with the program, but
maybe you could write.
I
think it's still on a cell phone, though. It looks like it's still a cell phone, maybe.
Yeah, it's still on a cell phone, but we can't hear you. Just maybe try to turn your audio all the way up. I mean, you can hear us fine, can't you? So it sounds like he can hear us, but we can't hear him. I can't quite troubleshoot with that right now. I'm sorry about that. But really quick, there's a comment about the training that says training means nothing if an implicit bias exists. So with that being said, I don't know about. That's a statement.
Well, training always helps. But officers are trained the law. I mean, they don't know the law more than anything else. When they go to the academy, that's one of the highest components of training is that legal component of law. How do you treat people, and that's so is a training component. Is reform good? Yes. Should they revamp police officers' training? Yes. Because what happens is, no matter how much training you get in the police academy, what will happen is this: they'll get out of the police academy, and then they'll have trainers who are training the old way, the way in which they know, not a reform way, in which they know. So it's going to take a curve for law enforcement to come about to to meet expectations of today.
Yeah, okay, and you guys are quick with lots of other less than lethal weapons in your arsenal that can be used. You know, there's other forces besides lethal forces that the officers should be using.
So that's a good point, Mr. Blaylock. But I do want to introduce. We have Mr. Ronald Coulter, a good friend of mine from college, who is also a retired NYPD officer and a candidate for city council in District 36. I believe that's in Brooklyn. You want to take your phone off of mute at this point. You want to take it off of mute. There you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm happy you guys let me join in.
No problem. No problem. I know you have some things going on, so you have to come in a little later. We are having some technical difficulties right now. So if you happen to get dropped out of the call, just feel free to come back in. And also, the regular audio always works better than the earpods.
Okay.
So just to give you that heads up. And I'm going to pose this question for Fred and Ronald because they're both, officers on different coasts. And what I want to know is the last comment that we read talked about an implicit bias, right? How familiar are you, or have you ever witnessed there being groups of people in your police department who seem to have it out for Black and brown people? They seem to want to, who enjoyed the privilege of over-policing our communities and things of that nature. Are you familiar with? There's been reports. There's one report that comes to us from the FBI that says that there were white militia groups that actually infiltrated the police department nationwide. And that report came to us from the FBI. And
Linwood sheriffs.
I'm sorry, say it again.
It's the Linwood Sheriff Department. There's a gang. They have gang signs and gang tattoos.
Right, and the sheriff department in Compton, California, right? I believe they have a gang called the Executioners. In Compton, California, there's a gang that called the Executioners that infiltrated the sheriff department there. And a Mr. Gonzalez, a former Marine of that sheriff department, actually blew the whistle, and he was harassed as such. And there's an article dating back to August the 4th of this year, where that sheriff is details being harassed for blowing the whistle on that gang called the Executioners.
We need vetting. Like they vet for other jobs, better vetting. You need to go through people's social media and go through their history for years and really vet anyone who you're going to put in charge of people's lives and give them a weapon and pay them our tax dollars. They should be vetted.
Let's let Mr. Coulter and Sergeant Miller answer. Okay. Let's let Mr. Coulter and Sergeant Miller answer since they're on the inside.
So let's start with you, Start with Mr. Coulter. You're also the president of. Can you say the organization's name for me so I don't mess it up?
I'm the president of New York Officers for Civil Rights. I also co-founded it after we experienced certain discrimination within the department. I'm just gonna go to say I'm blessed that I never experienced a situation where cops was out. Is it possible that it was done? But I have no knowledge of it in the New York City Police Department, because I don't think I would have lasted almost 20 years if I would have caught wind of that. I would have handled it much more differently than the average cop, because I didn't become a cop the average way. I didn't have the privilege of having a 2-family home and not being exposed to the drug pandemic that took place in our communities across this nation. I didn't have the opportunity to finish high school. So my route to law enforcement was a little bit different, but I made the best of it. And now I'm trying to show other Black and brown people in our communities that we can continue to we can be real products of our environments. We can come out and say we are successful. And the reason why I started my organization is solely for that. So we can start to let other Black and brown people know, like, look, we're going to be fighting for justice on the inside and out for us.
Fred, same question. Have you encountered any of the executioners in LAPD, or are you familiar with any white supremacists who might have been in the LAPD serving alongside you?
No, I have not. Have I encountered or experienced prejudice officers? Yes, definitely. Or preferential treatment and things like that? Yes, I have. But as far as to the question, no, I have not.
Okay. We have a comment from Redemption's Song 76. She says, yes, Mr. Blaylock, I've been saying that. Treat them the same way we do high-level federal employees when they seek high-level clearances. Social media has shown the clear-cut bias. So, Sergeant Fred, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, first of all, that's already being done as far as the hiring process. It's the hiring processes are very extensive. So that is a part of it. That just doesn't start with. They say that your background check always continues, so it never stops. So even today, officers' social media accounts and things like that are monitored. So that's part of the educational process, with the public. To know those things, we could focus on more things that could actually be more effective in assisting with the problems. But that's done already.
Okay. Miss Bettye, did you have anything you wanted to say in regards to us talking about prejudice officers in the police department?
I haven't encountered any personally, but I know that it exists, and what to do about that. Again, it starts at the beginning. Education, training, and maybe community policing, where, police get acquainted with the community and know their people. And I think maybe that will help.
I believe so. I think community policing is a really great point. Mr. Blaylock, you have something to say?
I just really appreciate what Ronald said. Hearing that come from an officer, that's like music to my ears, because the way we feel around here is that one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. If you have one or two or three bad cops, and these other cops are standing behind the blue line and protecting these guys, these cops who are doing bad, they're not exposing them, they're not outing them, they're not putting up for ridicule, they're kind of sitting back and allowing these cops to do what they do out of respect for the blue line. And to me, that's a cowardice. That's what cowards do. It takes courage and bravery to go against the grain. If you see injustice in your department around and you speak up on it, then that's what make us feel better. That'll give us more.
I'm going to say two things, and I'll make it as brief as possible. I remember being a rookie in Brooklyn, New York, covering Marcy houses. My partner was a white cop, and I think the New Jersey Nets was about to play the San Antonio Spurs in the finals, and they was arguing. A group of African Americans and Latinos was arguing in the group. The individual said to me, "I'm going to go write all of them a summons for being loud and boisterous." I said, "No, you're not, because that's how we communicate in our community. There's no fight going on. There's nothing going on. We're just adamant about who's going to win the playoff. And I'm about to go over there with him because I think Tim Duncan is going to win." So I say that to you just to say, I taught that cop. And until today, that Irish 6'4", 240-pound man, wherever he sees me at, he loves me, because his relationship with the African-American community is different for working with me for them 6 months. Just explaining to him that our culture is different,
Yeah.
And as far as the blue line go, I don't believe in the blue line. And I'll tell you why. I joined the police department because I noticed I could have either been on the corner screaming at the cops every time they did something wrong, or I could have joined the department and try to right any wrongs that I came across. And I would like to say, in my almost 2 decades of law enforcement, that I made changes. I know white cops right now who wants to come to our communities in police, who wants to get out of the car and interact with the community, because not everybody is racist. I'm going to be honest with you. The best one I ever had was an Italian kid from upstate New York. So I say that to say, if we stand behind this so-called blue wall of silence, you just have to imagine what we go through as African-American law enforcement officers within the department. What we're the equality and the ability to get into specialized divisions and so on and so forth. We go through these things. So what blue wall of silence do we have protecting us if we stand behind a so-called blue wall of silence? And I have to say, with all the black fraternities I'm a part of, with all the organizations I either started or I'm still partner of or co-chair on, we address these issues. And we let it be known that our communities are already underserviced in hospitals, underserviced in education. So why would we start by underservicing them as law enforcement officers and people who took an oath to serve?
Okay, so
I love that. And I just have to say, I admire that. And I am such a big proponent of bridging the gap to understanding. And that is exactly what we need. We need officers like you, Mr. Coulter, in law enforcement who can do exactly that, is bridge the gap to understanding, so that when you have white officers who see, a group of black people, they're not immediately policing them or criminalizing them. They understand who we are. And we don't all need to be criminalized for every little thing. So I want to thank you and tell you how much I appreciate that.
So with that being said, I believe it was Fred who spoke about you've seen prejudice officers, but you don't know them to be part of any, white militia groups or, racist gangs such as the executioners out of Compton. But I'm gonna go to this comment from a Mr. Jones. He says, "Yeah, but I've seen our own people that are black and brown police officers who couldn't wait to see their own people be and get abused." Shaking my head. Have you ever encountered, and this question is for Fred and Mr. Ron Coulter, have you ever encountered people who of our same culture join the force and take the opportunity to witness abuse or partake in it? And I'll start with you, Ron. Ron, I don't know if you can hear me. Are you getting pulled over right now?
I don't hear you.
I seen the lights. Getting pulled over. Buckle up, yes, sir.
All right, well, we just lost him, but yeah, a couple people that had comments for him. So I'll start with you, Fred. Have you seen people of black or brown, so-called black and brown people get harass their own kind, or partake in it, or witness it happen and don't say anything about it? Have you witnessed anything like that?
No, I've seen it in movies, but I haven't seen it. And I've been around. I've worked a lot of tough divisions throughout my career. I haven't had those easy assignments. I've never seen that.
Okay, all right.
I have seen it in movies though, but I have not seen it or witnessed it at all.
Okay, so we spoke a little bit about training. Can we talk a little bit about qualified immunity? The theory behind qualified immunity was to allow police officers to do their jobs without fear of being personally sued. But citizens can sue if the officer's actions are found to be unreasonable and the jurisdiction is held liable. What's your thoughts, Fred, on qualified immunity?
Well, so let's look at the innocence of the police officer who's out there trying to do the right thing based on the policies and the law. And situations, and understanding that situations where officers are required to make split-second decisions based on those two things. Should they be penalized for a mistake or an error severely like that? No. Now, officers can still be civilly sued today, even with qualified immunity, but it may not civilly. But as far as legally, no, that gives them some protections.
Okay, Ron, I'm gonna go back to the original question before you got took it off the stream. Have you seen people of black and brown descent, or so-called black and brown people, harass other black and brown people or allow it to happen?
Yeah, for some reason, and I always say this to other cops. I'm going to be honest with you. My career was as long and as beautiful as it was because I stood on a certain level of morals and a certain level of respect for myself. And I say that to you just to say, I sometimes when you go into certain communities, it be the same African Americans and Latinos that you're trying to serve and protect that want to test your manhood. But unfortunately, when you're in law enforcement, you have to have an extra layer of skin, and you have to know how to deal with that. But I have witnessed officers meet that aggression with aggression, and I just don't think that's always the right way. If someone is not physically attacking you, I think, I always tell people we can start low and go high if we want to. But if somebody come in high and we meet them at high, there's no defuse in that situation.
There's nowhere to
so
go from
as
there.
An officer, you have to.
So there's nowhere to go from there.
You have to have the verbal skills.
I think I just overtalked him at the wrong time. Then he got paused. He'll be back. There you go.
But yeah,
you can continue, Ron. I'm sorry, you got cut off a little bit. It got cut off. Oh, there you go. Technical difficulties. Mercury is in retrograde.
I appreciate that because there should be a lot of psychological classes and training, besides just, how to fire a weapon and the codes and all that stuff. You should have more psychological training, like to understand that you have inherent bias coming from your neighborhood. Like he said about, he didn't understand that blacks talk loud. He thought something was going on. So to try and flesh out some of those, because everyone has biases. Everyone has their own opinions from what they've been through, So to be able to go through psychological training where, you learn how to de-escalate. You learn the right words to calm situations down instead of elevate, And all too often, I've come across officers who have the weapons and have the mandate by the government to treat you any old kind of way, talk to you any old kind of way, and that's going to cause an issue, and then things get escalated very, very easily. So training, de-escalation training, psychological training, how to mentally spar with somebody, bring them down so you don't have to, and not letting your ego get the best of you, because all too often, the egos get the best of everybody. How you talking to me like that? I'm a cop. Don't talk to me like that. Who are you?
Right.
So those are just words, It shouldn't have to escalate to where you need a weapon. So de-escalation training and more psychological training, where these guys are, not gonna let their ego get to the level where someone's gonna end up getting hurt.
Well, speaking of training and de-escalating situations, I think it was the very first debate where I forget which candidate, it might have been Biden, started talking about one of the plans were to try to start sending out a health professional or a therapist with
they're doing that in the Bay right now.
They're doing that in the Bay Area already? Okay. I want to ask Miss Bettye, how do you feel about that as a health advocate when we talk about, mental health as it regards to police training, to police officers and the citizens as a whole? How do you feel about that, Miss Bettye? Do you feel it's a good idea?
I feel it's a good idea to have training. If not the police officers themselves, at least have someone in the department that can deal with mental illness, and also the mental ill person. I don't know if they can really be taught what to do or not to do, but the officers certainly can. They should be trained. Trained, and I think in order to do that, first we have to start with the candidate itself, the recruit. Start with the person that you recruit. We need to start with smarter candidates, and that can be taught, because everybody that is a police officer, I don't feel they've been properly trained or really know what they're doing. Some of them are there just for the money, and they, hop from city to city, depending on where the money is. And to me, that's not a very good idea. So basically, training. That's where it starts.
Okay, so with that being said, we heard a lot about training and we spoke briefly on recruitment. Since we have Fred here, who's a sergeant in the LAPD, I would like to ask you, what is recruitment like? What is the actual qualifications that it takes to be a member of the LAPD?
You have to have at least a high school education. If you do, you start at the lowest, college degrees and things like that bring up your initial starting pay. Everyone is trained the same way. They go through the same academy. The academy for Los Angeles is 7 months long. Now you have some agencies, it's 3 months, but it's 7 months long. And so they get the training. It's not that easy, in response to Bettye, it's not that easy to go from agency to agency. You give up a lot. You give up your seniority and things like that. So they may be paying more, but then for your seniority, it's like you can be working the rest of your life in order to catch up. If you give 5 years to an agency, then go somewhere else to another agency like that. So that's kind of rare. People do it mainly to go closer to where they live in some cases, but that's not that frequent at all. So people come to the academy. They come with a certain level of innocence. They're young in some cases, and it's just only when they get out things may change in the behavior, how they do things in a certain area. I can't say that when I started, every area was policed the same way. There were some rougher areas, and then there were some non-incidental areas, but officers adapted.
Okay, so with that being said, you spoke about it not being easy to go from department to department, but we heard of a lot of situations where a cop may be accused or somewhat charged with doing something wrong, get fired from one department and hired with another one. Is that something that frequently happens?
No. So what happens is some officers may quit in lieu of being fired.
Okay.
And therefore, but to get fired and then to get picked up by another agency, it's kind of it's kind of situational depending on what it was. I can't say that the internal processes are always fair on how they look at things compared to how another agency may look at it, which justified the firing.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as just a crime and then picked up somewhere else, no. That's
so you're saying it's possible for someone to quit after something happened and then go somewhere else?
Yes, and quit in lieu of, yes.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit more, because what people seem to be really harboring on is the screening, right? So Miss Sandra L. Peterson says screening candidates is very important. They had a rookie cop in Wolf City, Texas, about 1 week on the job. He shot and killed an unarmed black man who was breaking up an altercation. What do they do in regards to screening? And when we talk about police reform, what can be done better, or what can be done that's not being done to, to help us, not have these situations happen so often in our community?
So what you look at first is the training of that agency. And that's the thing. All agencies are not trained the same, and they don't have the same policies. So it's unfair for us, as an agency to look at other agencies and then criticize them for some actions, which we don't know their policies. It may differ from ours, which may allow a certain situation. So if a 3-month academy, in my opinion, 4-month academy is not enough in any situation. But you have these agencies and these cities where budgeting becomes a big factor. Mm-hmm. So therefore, they're not going to equip the officers, nor are they going to give them that level of time and training before they put them on the street and utilize them.
What about the screening? What is the screening process like, though?
Well, so there's extensive background check. If you go through a federal background check, if anyone's done that, it's pretty similar to that. Whereas they get your referrals, your education, they go way back in order to see past practices and then there's a big psychological component with that, a physical component with it, educational component with it.
Okay. All right. We have another question. This question goes, will the new hiring department do a background check or unemployment check? So you spoke about the background check, but what about employment check? Do they?
Yeah, they do. That's all included. And that's what most jobs, it's
right,
like most jobs, but more extensive.
Okay. So how is it that we can have situations to where, I know you said the different departments and they have different policies, right? But how is it where, like, the FBI gave us that report that I spoke of earlier, where they say white supremacist groups have infiltrated U.S. law enforcement agencies in every region of the country over the last 2 decades? How can we avoid that? How can we, get to the bottom of that? What should be done? Should it be something that's, nationwide, a policy that should be nationwide, or, what can we do about that?
Universal standards.
So the way I'll say that is this: you have people who were in gangs who infiltrated the military just to get the training and how to utilize weaponry and things like that. And same way with these militia groups and all of that stuff. A lot of these guys have gone through the U.S. military. So how do you stop that? It's very difficult.
Vetting.
To what end do you do a background check in order to satisfy anything on any job? We've all worked jobs, and there's always individuals that we can speak of. So people who are being police officers come from today's society, and so there's no society of people that's perfect. So you're going to get that, and you have to expect that there's going to be a percentage in everything that's going to exist. So to say that something will take that away is unrealistic in some senses.
Okay, that's a fair point. But what I would say is, what about the over policing of Black and brown communities? If that's the case, so if we're being over policed,
Yes.
it could
Okay.
attract these types, like flies to honey, right? Because they know that we're over policing Black and brown communities.
True. And there's proven facts in that, so I can't dispute that. That's occurred. So there's no argument with that.
I just say we should have universal. Okay, go ahead, Fred.
So what one thing that so there's no model that really works. So let's say, for example, I believed at one time in my career, I said, wow. So being from Chicago, I said, well, to work for the city of Chicago, you have to live within the city of Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at Chicago. Not bashing their police department, but that hasn't helped in the crime, even though that does exist there. It doesn't help with the crime element. So I don't have that answer. They've had a good models at one time for community policing that was very successful, probably 15, 20 years ago. But so I don't have the answer for that. That does exist. It has existed.
Right.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's existed since the inception of policing, and in the South,
But
there's a lot of.
when you are, and thank you, Lance, for that. But when you are working in a predominantly Black or Hispanic community, well, that's who you're going to police. So if you have 40% Black, 40% Hispanic, and then you have the other percentage, other ethnicities, well, who are you going to encounter mostly?
I kind of wonder why it's so systemic here in this country, in this nation. Why is it not happening so much in other countries? Like I read a stat. It said the first 6 months in 2018, police shot and killed more American citizens than in France, Germany, England, Australia combined since 1970. 1970. That was shocking to me. I was like, what is it? What people are crazier over here than in Germany and France? It's the people who are given the guns. It's the training. It's the de-escalation training.
But those are only a few countries. I mean, look what's happening in Nigeria. Their police, their special anti-robbery sector, they are
we're talking about
killing,
democratic,
murdering, raping their citizens. So we have to be.
Nations like that, third world nations. That's third world nations are dealing with dictators. I'm talking about in modern westernized democratic societies.
But all nations across the board, it's well known that last time I checked, we were, I believe, the second leading amount of people in prison, which is alarming. So this country has, this nation has.
Now that's the
right.
problem. That's the problem. The high school
pipeline,
to prison
correct.
pipeline, the prison industrial complex, and that's when you can get into privatized prisons. Now that has more to do with greed and money.
True. I just one last thing. Oh yeah, one last thing, because this is a great subject right here. But one last thing is that the fact that if there's a bad officer and he has poor judgment more than once. There's a few bad officers that have a record of making these poor choices, and they're allowed to remain on the police force, and they end up costing us, the taxpayers, millions of dollars being diverted from education, healthcare, whatever, because the officers, they could commit the crime and get away with it and don't do any time, but then we have to pay for the lawsuits. The city for the lawsuits, for the millions and millions and millions of dollars. So we have to pay for their mistakes. So what I heard once before that sounded really good is, make the police unions for it. Make it come out the police officers' pensions, and see how many more lawsuits you'll get. I kind of guess that would reduce the amount of lawsuits that we're getting in quite a bit if the officers have to pay for that out their own pensions instead of making us cover for their mistakes, which we've been doing historically in this country.
So I gather from this conversation so far that you guys believe that police reform should look like training, more vetting of the officers, as well as more accountability. We need to hold people accountable for the things they do. This comment is referencing to something we said earlier when we talked about when Fred, you spoke of police officers being from the town or city that they're policing. Shay Hercules says, NYPD doesn't work like that. A lot of officers are from Long Island and Jersey and New Jersey. So that speaks to a lot of people coming from outside the community policing these communities. And we have another comment. Redemption says white supremacist infiltration and the alarming number of officers who engage in domestic violence is very problematic. Ongoing monitoring should occur. Say what you will about Sean King, but he posted on a closed Facebook page where officers are openly joking about killing people. So we have that. Let me ask anybody who may be informed with this, and I'll start with Fred. This is the election season. We have, the presidential election is in actual couple days. But that's not the only election we should be focused on. We should be focused on local elections and things of that nature, right? So what are some of the positions that we should be focused on, filling that can help us with police reform? Like what positions out there that work directly with the police department, as far as you know? Fred, I'll start with you.
Well, I think that's going to be one of the main ones is the Attorney General, the District Attorney rather. That's going to be a big one.
Okay.
Yeah, Jackie Lacey's been a big problem for people of color in LA County for a long time, and she has got to go. She doesn't believe in prosecuting killer cops. Like I say, it only takes one to spoil the bunch, but there's been many instances where she's had the opportunity to prosecute cops with extensive human rights abuses records that are still on the force. She's never lifted a finger. She's Jackie Lacey is a major problem.
I won't advocate a candidate, but what I will say is that whatever candidate comes into play, there will be other reforms that's going to be required and voted on in order to bring about change, because people are insisting on it.
Yeah, accountability. That's all we ask for: transparency and accountability. How hard is that?
Miss Betty, you want to unmute your mic as well?
Let's not make this about bashing. Let's not make this about bashing law enforcement, because again, the whole point of this podcast is to bridge the gap to understanding and to be respectful. Because at the end of the day, these sectors are charged with protecting the people, and so better outcomes
the people.
Come
yes,
from when
the people.
But again, let's remain respectful and not make this about bashing law enforcement.
Well,
because
no,
there are lots of things like Mr.
I'm not bashing law enforcement. I'm saying we need to change at the top. And like Fred said, the district attorney is a very powerful position. And if she was to actually be accountable to the people, then we could get some change, some sustainable change that we could all agree upon. But if the people at the top aren't listening and aren't being accountable and allowing such things to go on, then there's going to continue to be hostility.
But see, that's why conversations like these are important, so that we can reduce hostility, so that again, when we converse like we're doing now, how often do people get a chance to sit and discuss these matters with law enforcement, or as you say, higher ups? That's why these conversations are important, because there's so much that the people don't understand. Mr. Miller brought up earlier transparency and things that the people don't know. Again, that's why these conversations are important, but we want to remain respectful. We don't want to have a very narrow point of view, because I'm here to learn just like you're here to learn. And, again, I'm sure law enforcement wants to learn from us.
Yeah, and we're voting this week. We have to vote, and that's the most important thing is that we vote and we hold our politicians accountable to the agenda of the people, not the corporations, not the businesses, not the special interests of the people.
Mr. M, I think you had a question for Miss Bettye. I think you had a question for Miss Bettye.
So I'm having a little technical difficulties on my side, so I can't unmute you, Miss Bettye. So you want to unmute yourself. You want to press that microphone button on your screen. I think she's getting some help right now. So I also can't bring any more comments on the screen as of right now. But one comment said ongoing psych screening as part of one of the things that we should do to have for police reform. And in regards to my question to who can we vote for to help with the police reform, somebody said Miss Sandra L. Peterson said governors, state reps, and DA. And DA is for district attorney, in case anyone doesn't know. And she also says some city councils have jurisdiction over police department policies. Make sure you choose wisely. When is the upcoming election for the DA in LA? Do you know, Fred?
I think the votes have to be in by November 2nd.
Okay, so it's on the same ballot. So it's the same ballot right now. Oh,
yes,
okay,
yes,
great.
on the same ballot.
That's tomorrow.
Tuesday, and it has the district attorney on there as well, in LA.
All right, there we go, Miss Bettye. I was able to get your mic unmuted. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I'm having problems with my phone, and my battery is running low. Local elections are important. Like you said, we have the sheriff department, we have the attorney general. The state's attorney. We have, well, of course, the superintendent of police and all that, but that's where it starts as far as local. We have our councilman, the city councilman, and all of those are very important. That's where we have to start. And they control a lot of this police department law enforcement, period. That's the way I put it that way. And so basically, we have to remember that it's not just voting for president. We have to start even school the school department and all educational. We have to include all of those, and that will help control a lot of what we're having, in our country right now.
Agreed.
Sorry.
It's okay.
The money out of politics.
That's okay.
It's okay. Go ahead, Jessica.
There is one thing, I don't know if we discussed it earlier, but I'd like to make a quick pivot to talk about social justice reform, which we know goes hand in hand with criminal justice reform. I want to know, I want to ask each of you, what does social justice mean to you? Is that economic empowerment? Is it closing the wealth gap between Black Americans and whites? Is reparations even a part of that conversation? What about better education, starting with early education in college? Miss Bettye, I'd like to start with you.
So give her a second. She's on a little bit of a delay. Miss Bettye, also your mic is on mute, in case you don't know. There you go.
Okay. I'm still having problems, but what was the question?
We can hear you. The question is, what does social justice reform look like to you? We know social justice goes... Yes, we can hear you.
Social justice, to me, it includes, First of all, social justice includes all the issues that we're having today, okay, which include race, gender, age, religion, education. It includes all of that, and it includes economic justice, social and political justice, and we should have equal access to each of them. That includes distributing wealth and the privileges and opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. Mr. Blaylock, you want to same question?
Yeah, I can't say it any better. Maybe it might come in a little clearer, but yeah, equality. Giving everyone the same opportunities. Like, it shouldn't take a person 6 steps if you're a person of color or minority, as it will take another person like 2 steps. Like let's say Obama. Obama, head of Harvard Law, super educated, super articulate, pulled himself up by himself through university and school, and he had to go through all this to become president. Donald Trump, he was just rich and white. He became president just like that. So he had 2 steps to go through. Obama had 100 steps to go through. So equality on all levels. Like it should, like, true equality, but that encompasses a vast spectrum of education, healthcare opportunities. Just really extensive. But it's going to take a lot of work. But it does start with voting, putting people in who are able to articulate and communicate, and who are accountable, like I'm saying, accountable to the constituents, and not just accountable to, corporate interest and big business, which is, unfortunately, it seems like in politics in America now, money is the deciding factor, and not what's right or what's wrong. It's who's spending the most money, who's buying the most ads, who's spending it the most, So I think we got to get money out of politics.
Fred, same question.
Yeah, I do believe in equality. So yeah, I think that should be in employment and everything else. So I don't have a whole lot to say on that, because I was kind of focusing on something that Jessica said earlier. But yeah, that's I'm in line with both of those opinions.
Okay. Jessica, what about you? What does social justice reform look like to you? What would you like to see?
Ooh, I think Miss Bettye said it the best. And one thing you'll always hear me say, I think it starts again with just bridging the gap to understanding. Because I think, people who are in power, if they are so out of touch with the majority of the people that they can't even begin to understand our needs, there isn't always an incentive to make it equal for everyone. So I think, again, it just starts with continuing to advocate for ourselves, to advocate for our communities, and partnering and collaborating with leaders who want to do the most good for the people. It's going to take all of us together. This cannot be one against the other. So
I would like
that's
to
where it
see.
starts.
I would like to see more police officers from our community, but at the same time, I would like to see our community be I would like to see an end of the over policing of our communities. All right, because we go to jail for the majority of the crimes, and we don't commit the majority of the crimes, and that will create a false narrative of we are creating the majority of the crimes because we're the ones being arrested for it. But when we just speak of the main crime that a lot of us get arrested for, which is drugs, nonviolent offense, which is drugs, our community does not do the most drugs, but we are the ones who get held up as the poster child of drug use, of selling drugs, etc. Right? So I would definitely like.
Has a lot to do. Sorry, go ahead. I was
No,
just
go
going to
ahead.
say, do you think that has a lot to do? Do you think that has a lot to do with the school to prison pipeline and the privatization of prisons, keeping bodies inside? I'd like to know your answer and Mr. Miller's.
I think it's all relevant. You know what I mean? I think the the school to prison pipeline is there, but how it's being enforced is through these nonviolent drug offenses and things of that nature, where they will send you to jail for an overwhelmingly long time for a small amount of crack cocaine, where somebody on Wall Street from another community can get caught with actual cocaine that's used to make the crack and, go home. You know what I mean?
Disparaging in sentencing. That's the thing, disparaging in sentences. Like, you get vast amounts of time for doing the same crime if you're a person of color as if you're not. So, that mandatory minimum sentencing, that's in the 3 strikes are out. That affects minorities inherently more dramatically than anybody else because,
Mr. Miller, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts on the school to prison pipeline?
Well, I'm not sure versus speak on school to prison. I haven't heard that terminology, but with regards to the disparity, I was surprised after watching a program, informative program that had some credibility, that I was arresting people and they were getting charged with felonies for, like you said, crack cocaine and things like that. And to learn that in other areas with pure cocaine and things like that, you would think that ounce for ounce, which actually the crack
3
cocaine
times the amount.
is cut in half, that you would have the same sentence or more, but that hasn't been the case. Now, of
Triple.
course, you have to understand that at that time you had Nancy Reagan, or President Reagan had the war on drugs, led by, that was Nancy Reagan's thing. And so the courts, basically based on that expectation from the top, there was a higher sentencing. So was I surprised at that disparity? Yes, I was, definitely. And
you even look at
unfair? Yes.
You even look at the 3 strikes are out.
What I don't want you guys to lose sight of is, and I think I said this from the very beginning, there's places that each of you don't go. Then there's a reason for that. And if you did go there, you would expect some level of protection from the police. But there's places and there's people that you all know, and groups of people that you all know, that you don't want to be around because you may become a victim of theirs or get injured. So that's what police are for, not to empower themselves over the citizenry. That is not the case. It is to help and assist and to keep you free of crime or incidents of crime. So, and in some cases, I can see that in some agencies and other places, even ours, that has not been the case, and that people have lost sight of that. Yeah. So crime is.
I would like to ask you.
You're selling dope, and you're out there victimizing people who become influenced or addicted to that drug. So it's still a problem. But as far as the top, the over sentencing for it or unfair sentencing, that's where I have issue.
Yeah, I have an issue with mandatory minimum sentencing too, because that takes away the discretion from a judge. If it's someone, like this is the case of this lady, she was a mother of 2, and her boyfriend, she had a clean record, never been caught doing anything, a clean record. He begged her and asked her to drive something somewhere, and she didn't even know what it was, but she did it. I don't know. And she got caught, and the judge, it was her first time, 20 years. Her first time. The judge had no discretion. Well, you were in love with your boyfriend. He kind of talked you into it. This is your first offense. You have no criminal record ever, and had to give her 20 years. And the state, we had to pay taxes to take care of her kid for 20 years, her children. We had to pay for them. So mandatory minimum sentencing where the judge doesn't have discretion, to adjust the sentence is something that affects Black and brown, as well as 3 strikes are out, because if you have a good attorney, you can get that felony knocked down to a misdemeanor. And if you're a person of color, you're going to be the first one to get pulled over, the first one to get arrested, the first one to get harassed, the last one to have proper representation. So it's going to affect our communities a lot more than it does other communities. So just the way the laws are written, is some people could say racist.
And you raised a good point, especially about the mandatory system, the mandatory sentences and the judges, which goes to this comment right here from Ms. Davis. She says, please don't forget about the judges. It's important to check their sentencing record, and more importantly, the decisions rendered on the cases brought before them that affect the community. Jessica, you were trying to ask a question. I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question?
No, that's
okay. So we just lost Jessica due to the technical difficulties we've been having all episode. And, we apologize about that. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Jessica is definitely back with us. Let's get her back on the screen because I think she has something important to say. There she is.
Hi, everyone. Back again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just well.
I'll make it quick. Mr. Miller, something that you said about police being here to protect the people. And if you haven't answered this already, I'd really like to know because, I think that's a perspective that unfortunately a lot of people in the community don't share. We've seen so much trauma, but there is a great amount of people who would like there to be peace. We want to be able to put our trust in police. What are some of the ways that you think we can rebuild trust between the community and law enforcement officers?
Well, one way is, and one of the questions that I've had with people who would bring a lot of things to my attention, I said, why are you so upset with your police agency? I mean, like, you see, so when you look at things that sensationalized, and we have with the social media, with television and things like that, you have to don't lose sight of the agency that's providing you the level of service in which you expect. So and when you don't lump them in. When you have that issue, you address the issue with the agency, because this is your community police officers. These are the ones who are protecting you. And that's when you come out and you deal with those situations aggressively in order to if there's change to be made or understanding to be gained. That's when you get that. But when you see these things nationwide, I get alarmed too, and I see certain things, and it's like, wow, today people are doing that. But I can't say that the officers and supervisors in which I've led, I can honestly say would not be in those situations or similar situations.
Well, Jessica, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, do you think that there's any more that could be done on the part of law enforcement, maybe as far as like outreach to the community, or do you think it all falls on the citizens to just change their perspective?
Well, I go back to what I said earlier, and all agencies aren't the same. I could tell you that Los Angeles has a lot of programs that interact with the city, which enforcement is not their primary objectives, and in a lot of the housing developments and things like that. So places like that. So it's to bridge those gaps and create that level of transparency with the processes to gain that support and understanding. I could say when I came on, there wasn't that. There was, we were occupying force. We did what we wanted to do, and there was no explanation for it. But that's not the same now. Now, back to what you said earlier about the over policing. Has that been found to exist? Yes, it has.
Well,
but not so much as over policing. It is. It's an overreach it's an overreach and well, it's the same thing. Over policing, exactly.
It's a us versus them kind of thing sometimes, where the cops are the good guys and the citizens are the bad guys, and they need protection from each other because they're all crazy and they're gonna kill each other. Like the motto says protect and serve. And some people around here, they think it's to harass and convict. They don't feel the same. They don't feel like the police are there. Like, I know, like, I've never called the police in my life. I know a lot of people that never, they handle their own situation. If there's something to handle, they'll handle it. They're not going to call the police because if you call the police, they come up You might get shot. You might get harassed. You never know. So, it's unfortunate that in some parts of some neighborhoods, people are afraid to call the cops, for many reasons. And they don't. And then they take justice in their own hands. And then you get,
So that brought me to a thought that I was listening to someone earlier, actually the officer from New York. And then you, Lance, also. So here's the thing: when you talked about cops standing by and allowing certain things to happen. Okay, so and then I said in the earlier segment that cops are people. Now you know that in certain areas crime could occur and a person could see it, but they'll be afraid to step up, even if it was a loss of life and they saw it, they witnessed things. They won't do it because of fear of certain levels of retaliation. So do you oust yourself, or you strategically basically get in positions to make change and understand the ramifications of what you may encounter? So can you force that person to tell you what happened when they saw it? No, you can't, because they're going to have fears that you can't provide that level of protection for.
Yeah.
So this is just a community. So once again, back what I said is, police come from within your communities. They get a lot of training, and I can tell you in Los Angeles, they get a whole lot of training. And there's a whole lot of accountability to exhaustion, but it's there.
Well, one point I wanted to say in regards to what Mr. Blaylock was saying, that I agree with you. I think that sometimes we get people that, a lot of times, at least where I'm from, it were people from outside of my community that police the community, and they'd be scared of the community when they shouldn't be scared of the community that they're actually policing.
Right. Yeah.
But in regards to, like, the no snitching thing, or people not speaking up when they see crimes on both sides of the track, what I wanted to ask, and I wish Ron was on the line still, I wanted to ask you, Fred, is it far-fetched that a police officer arrests another police officer while he's doing something?
It's never happened. How has ever happened?
I would. I've joked with my peoples in the past and said that's something I would have did if I was a police officer. I'd arrest the cop doing the wrong.
You'd have been ostracized.
That's a fact.
Well, no. If you see misconduct or potential misconduct, you're obligated to first stop it and then secondly report it.
Mm-hmm.
If there was an officer that worked with you that was a tattletale, how long would he last?
Well,
in your department, how long would a tattletale last?
Well, laws have changed from now. You're talking about when I started compared to now. So now you have much more protections with whistleblowers and things like that than you had back in the 80s. Okay, so it's different now. Now, yes, you would definitely, people would step up. They wouldn't tolerate it.
So if anybody's listening and they're of age where they can still join the police department and they're interested in doing so, just know that you can you can blow the whistle and things are changed to the point where at very least there'll be some advocates for you, and you won't end up like those NYPD officers who got in trouble or outs for admitting that there was a quota, for example. I remember there was a group of officers, black and brown officers, who were ostracized because they admitted that there was a quota when there was supposed to be no more quota, So, yeah. I want to thank everybody who came, Fred, Mr. Fred, Sergeant Fred, excuse me, Mr. Blaylock, Miss Bettye, and of course, Bill Duke, who we couldn't get his mic to work today. He's actually on the road. He's out of town. And you hear the laughter of my son in the background. That means it's time for me to skedaddle. But at the same time,
well, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to have a dialogue and flush some things out and talk. And we got Fred here; he's a veteran, and it's good that we communicate. Like Jesse's saying, it's the most important thing that people talk, people from different sides, different perspectives, because no one has the one right answer. It's going to take an amalgamation of perspectives to get a better, clearing understanding of what's really needed. Because one thing that I think we all can agree on is that change is needed. you know, and it has to happen. It has to. And I think now is a great time. You know, now is like the best time to make it happen. We're going through a change in this world. Hopefully, human beings will evolve to our humanity. It's going to take a lot of work. You know.
Hopefully, we had a pivotal point right now.
Yeah.
Last time we spoke to Bill Duke, we spoke about global warming and things of that nature as well. And you know, we have a lot of problems, and this is one of them. But I do want to thank everybody, you know, for attending. Also, Mr. Blaylock, if you could show us that mug one more time. If you want to get a hat or a mug like that, a magic mug that actually changes colors when the when the hot liquid hits it, you can feel free to go to www.yourvotematters.store. Yourvotematters.store. And you can get a dad hat or a snapback or a sweater or a shirt. Different hashtags: Black Votes Matter, Latino Vote Matter, Your Vote Matters, My Vote Matters. All of this is available at yourvotematters.store. So,
and please vote. Please vote. Take your time to get informed about the issues, and you can't complain about it if you're not willing to put forth any sort of effort to make a change, you know. So
Absolutely. And with that being said, I would like to share a quick quote that says, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In the unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." That is a quote from the late and great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his speech in 1963 at the March on Washington. And I think that is so incredibly relevant.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Jessica. And as you see, Mr. Blaylock has on the Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks shirt. And Mills Lane says, "This part I caught was great. Keep it up." Thank you. We will keep it up. Even though elections is happening this week, we will keep up the Your Vote Matters podcast because there are local elections happening all over the country, and there are politicians that need to be held accountable and or need a voice to, you know, reach out to us, the people. And Miss Sandra L. Peterson, thank you. She says, "Mr. M, great job as host / facilitator. I really appreciate that." And I want to thank everybody again for joining us, the people watching at home. And once again, our very special panel, Sergeant Fred, Miss Jessica Williams, Miss Bettye, Mr. Blaylock, and of course, Bill Duke. We apologize, but we thank you for showing up earlier. And also Mr. Ron Coulter. I hope that we can have everybody back at a later date as we keep this demonstration going. And hopefully we can get to the bottom of some of the technical difficulties and, you know, run the stream a little smoother. Also want to thank our partners at the yourvotesmatter.store, my executive producer, Miss Jacqueline Blaylock. Okay, and yes, we want to remind everybody, go and vote. All right, go and vote. And don't forget there are other positions out there besides president and vice president, as the panel brought up earlier. You can actually vote this election for your local DA, which is that
important.
Very important. Very important. It directly impacts.
Tomorrow is today.
The future is now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right. Tomorrow is today. Tomorrow is today, November 3rd, 2 days from now, everyone. So make your voice count because your vote matters.
There you go. So I want to thank everybody again, and I want to say peace. Everybody say bye to the audience. Peace out.
Peace, soul. Love, respect.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.
You guys love you. Be safe, everybody. Be safe.
Peace.